Jake spent the next few hours learning about the galaxy and the war against the Dominion. Zephyr introduced him to the other resistance leaders who had come to Earth. There was Cora, a plant-like being who could control growing things. There was Nexus, who looked like a tall human made of blue light. There was Rock, a creature that looked like a walking boulder with glowing eyes. Each of these beings had lost their home worlds to the Dominion. They had been fighting the Empire for years, but they had never been able to achieve a real victory. The Dominion was too strong and too organized. The Dominion has conquered hundreds of worlds, Cora explained to Jake in a voice that sounded like wind through leaves. They have massive fleets and unlimited resources. Most resistance groups can only hit small targets and then run away. But what you did today was different, Nexus said. His voice sounded like music played on crystal chimes. You did not just fight the Dominion. You confused them. You made them make mistakes. Jake was beginning to understand. The Dominion was successful because they could predict how other species would fight. They had detailed information about the weapons, tactics, and psychology of every known intelligent race. But they had no information about humans. We need to use this advantage while we still have it, Jake said. When the reinforcements arrive, they will be prepared for what we did today. Zephyr nodded. That is why we need to work quickly. We need to create new weapons and defenses before the Dominion learns how to counter them. Jake looked around at the destroyed Dominion ships. Can we use their technology against them? That is an interesting idea, Rock said in a voice like grinding stones. Most species cannot adapt Dominion technology to their own use. But you might be able to do it. Jake, Lisa, and the resistance fighters spent the next several hours studying the damaged Dominion ships. Jake was amazed at what he found. The Dominion technology was very advanced, but it was also very rigid. Everything was designed to work in a specific way, and there was no room for creativity or adaptation. This is their weakness, Jake realized. They build everything to be perfect, but they cannot change when something unexpected happens. Jake began to work on a new project. He took components from the Dominion ships and combined them with Earth technology and resistance equipment. The result was a weapon that no one had ever seen before. The weapon looked like a cross between a rocket launcher and a guitar. It fired bolts of energy that could change direction in mid-flight and adapt to different types of targets. The Dominion's defensive systems would not know how to stop it. This is incredible, Zephyr said as Jake demonstrated the weapon. I have never seen anything like this before. It is not just the weapon, Jake explained. It is the way of thinking that created it. Humans do not follow the same rules as other species. We make things up as we go along. Lisa had been working on her own project. She had combined Dominion scanning technology with Earth computer systems to create an early warning system. It could detect approaching ships from much farther away than normal sensors. The Dominion reinforcements are still 4 hours away, Lisa reported, but there are a lot of them. I count at least 20 ships. Jake felt a chill. 20 ships was far more than they had fought before. Even with their new weapons, they might not be able to win. We need help, Jake said. We need more people who can think the way we do. Zephyr had an idea. What if we contacted other humans? Your species has billions of individuals. Surely some of them have the same abilities you do. Jake thought about this. There were people all over Earth who were good at fixing things, building things, and solving problems. If they could be taught about alien technology, they might be able to help. But how do we contact them? Jake asked. And how do we convince them that this is real? Lisa smiled. Leave that to me. I have contacts in the government and the military. If we can show them proof of what is happening, they will have to listen. Over the next 2 hours, Jake and Lisa worked with the resistance fighters to contact Earth's governments. It was not easy. Most officials did not believe the reports of alien contact. But the evidence was too strong to ignore. Soon, military forces from several countries began to arrive at Jake's location. They brought scientists, engineers, and weapons experts. Jake was worried that they might try to capture the resistance fighters, but Zephyr had planned for this. "We are not here to conquer your world," Zephyr told the human military leaders. "We are here to save it. The Dominion is coming, and they will destroy everything if we do not work together." The military leaders were skeptical at first, but when they saw the destroyed Dominion ships and the alien technology, they began to believe. When Lisa's sensors detected the approaching Dominion fleet, all doubts disappeared. "How long do we have?" asked General Martinez, the senior military officer. "Less than 2 hours," Lisa replied. "And they are bringing everything they have." Jake looked at the small group of resistance fighters and human soldiers. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had something the Dominion did not expect: the ability to work together and adapt to new situations. "We cannot win this battle by fighting them the way they expect," Jake said. "We need to do something completely unexpected." Jake had an idea. Instead of waiting for the Dominion to attack, they would strike first. But they would not attack the ships directly. They would attack the Dominion's ability to coordinate their forces. Working together, the humans and resistance fighters created a network of hybrid devices that could jam the Dominion's communications and sensors. The devices were hidden throughout the forest and mountains, powered by a combination of Earth electricity and alien energy crystals. When the Dominion fleet arrived, they found themselves blind and deaf. Their sensors could not locate the human forces, and their ships could not communicate with each other effectively. Commander Vex, who had been rescued from the surface and was now commanding the fleet, was furious. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "Our technology is superior to anything on this primitive world." But Jake's hybrid devices were not based on any known technology. They used principles from multiple species, combined in ways that the Dominion's computers could not understand or counter. The battle that followed was unlike any fight in galactic history. The Dominion ships were powerful, but they were confused and disorganized. The human and resistance forces were smaller and weaker, but they were coordinated and adaptive. Jake's new weapons proved to be devastatingly effective. The energy bolts could change direction and adapt to different targets, making them almost impossible to defend against. The Dominion ships began to fall one by one, but the real turning point came when Jake realized something important. The Dominion's greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. They had built their entire empire on the idea that they were superior to everyone else. They could not adapt when faced with something truly different. Jake used this knowledge to create a final weapon. It was not a physical device, but a computer virus that attacked the Dominion's rigid thinking patterns. The virus spread through their communication networks, causing their systems to shut down as they tried to process information that did not fit their programming. The battle ended with the Dominion fleet in full retreat. Commander Vex's flagship was badly damaged, and several ships had been destroyed. The remaining ships fled toward the edge of the solar system, but Jake knew that this was not the end. The Dominion would return with an even larger force, and they would be prepared for human tactics. "We have won this battle," Jake said to the assembled humans and aliens, "but the war is just beginning." Zephyr smiled. "You are right, my friend. But today you have shown the galaxy something important. You have shown that the Dominion can be defeated. Word of this victory will spread to every resistance cell in the galaxy." General Martinez looked at Jake with new respect. "What do we do now?" Jake looked up at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, the Dominion was planning their return. But he also knew that humans were no longer alone in the galaxy. They had all eyes, and they had something that the Dominion could never understand: the ability to find hope in the darkest situations and to create solutions where none seemed possible. "Now we prepare," Jake said. "We teach other humans about the galaxy, and we learn from our alien friends. We build new weapons and defenses that the Dominion cannot counter. And most importantly, we show the galaxy that freedom's worth fighting for." As the sun set over the Montana mountains, Jake Morrison, the mechanic who had repaired a stranger's ship, looked out at a world that had forever changed. Earth was no longer hidden from the galaxy, and humanity was about to take its place among the stars. The Dominion might return, but they would find a planet and a people ready to fight for their freedom. The war for the galaxy had begun, and humanity was ready to show the universe what they were truly capable of. Jake and Lisa crept out of the tunnel entrance and moved carefully toward the Dominion ships. The three black vessels were even more intimidating up close. They were huge, dark, and covered with weapons that Jake did not recognize. There were 4 Scarith soldiers guarding the ships. They were standing at different positions around the clearing, but they were not paying close attention. They seemed bored and tired from the long search in the forest. Jake studied the ships carefully. He could see that they had landing gear. That was touching the ground, and there were several panels on the sides that looked like they might be maintenance access points. "I think those panels might lead to important systems," Jake whispered to Lisa. "If we can damage those, we might be able to disable the ships." Lisa nodded. "How do we get past the guards?" Jake thought for a moment. "We need to create a distraction, something that will draw them away from the ships." Jake remembered something that Zephyr had told him about the Dominion soldiers. They were trained to respond to threats in a specific way. They would always investigate loud noises or signs of attack. Jake pulled out some of the equipment he had brought from his workshop. He had small explosive devices that he used for clearing stumps from his property. They were not very powerful, but they would make a lot of noise. "I am going to set off an explosion on the other side of the clearing," Jake told Lisa. "When the guards go to investigate, we will attack the ships." Jake worked his way around the edge of the clearing, staying hidden in the thick bushes. He placed one of his explosive devices behind a large rock about 50 yards from the ships. He set a timer to give himself enough time to get back to Lisa. The explosion was louder than Jake had expected. The sound echoed through the forest, and the guards immediately became alert. They talked to each other in their harsh language. Then 3 of them ran toward the sound of the explosion. This left only 1 guard watching the ships. Jake and Lisa moved quickly toward the nearest vessel. The remaining guard was looking toward the explosion, so he did not see them approaching. Jake used the alien weapon to stun the guard. The soldier fell to the ground, unconscious but not dead. Jake did not want to kill anyone if he could avoid it. Jake and Lisa quickly went to work on the ship's systems. Jake used his tools to open the access panels, while Lisa watched for the return of the other guards. Inside the panels, Jake found complex technology that was similar to what he had seen in Zephyr's ship. There were crystals, metal conductors, and energy conduits that glowed with different colors. "This is like the engine I repaired for Zephyr," Jake said, "but much more complex." Jake began to disconnect important-looking components. He was not sure exactly what each part did, but he knew that removing them would cause problems for the ship. As Jake worked, he heard Zephyr's voice coming from the communicator. "Jake, I am almost to your location. I can see your world's sun from here." "That is good news," Jake said. "Lisa and I are trying to disable the Dominion ships." "Be very careful," Zephyr warned. "Dominion ships have security systems that will alert the crew if someone tries to sabotage them." As if on cue, an alarm began to sound from the ship. Lights began flashing, and Jake could hear mechanical sounds coming from inside the vessel. "We need to hurry," Lisa said. "The other guards will be back soon." Jake worked faster. He found what looked like a main power conduit and began to disconnect it. As he did, the lights on the ship began to dim. The 3 guards who had gone to investigate the explosion came running back toward the ships. They were angry and confused, and they were looking for whoever had caused the distraction. Jake and Lisa moved to the second ship and began working on its systems. Jake was getting better at recognizing the important components, and he was able to work more quickly. "Jake," Zephyr's voice came from the communicator, "I am now close enough to scan the Dominion ships. I can help you disable them more effectively." Zephyr explained which components were most important to the ship's operation. With this guidance, Jake was able to cause much more damage in less time. The guards had found their unconscious companion and were now searching for the intruders. Jake and Lisa had to work very quickly to avoid being caught. They moved to the third ship and began their sabotage. This ship was different from the others. It was larger and had more complex systems. Jake realized that this must be the command ship. "If we can disable this ship," Jake said, "we might be able to cut off the soldiers' communication with their empire." Jake and Lisa worked together to access the ship's communication systems. Jake found a large array of crystals and metal components that were clearly designed for long-range communication. As Jake began to disconnect the communication system, something unexpected happened. The system activated, and Jake could suddenly hear voices speaking in the Dominion language. "What is that?" Lisa asked. "I think it is a communication from the Dominion Empire," Jake said. "They are talking to Commander Vex." Jake wished he could understand what was being said, but the language was completely alien to him. However, he could tell from the tone of the voices that the conversation was important. Suddenly, Jake heard another voice on the communication system. This voice was different from the others. It was calmer and more musical. Jake realized that it was Zephyr's voice. "Jake," Zephyr said through the communicator, "I am close enough now to intercept their communications. I can translate what they are saying." Zephyr explained that the Dominion Empire was sending more ships to Earth. They had decided that Jake was too dangerous to be allowed to live. They were going to destroy him and his entire planet to make sure that his knowledge could not be used against them. "How long do we have?" Jake asked. "The reinforcements will arrive in about 6 hours," Zephyr said, "but I have more news. I am not alone. I have brought friends." Jake looked up at the sky and saw new lights approaching. These ships were different from the Dominion vessels. They were smaller and more graceful, and they glowed with the same beautiful light as Zephyr's ship. "The resistance has arrived," Zephyr said. "We are going to help you fight the Dominion." Jake felt a surge of hope. He and Lisa were no longer alone in their battle against the alien invaders. However, Jake also realized something important. The Dominion was not just after him anymore. They were going to attack Earth itself. Every person on the planet was now in danger. Jake finished disabling the communication system and looked at Lisa. "We need to get back to the tunnels and plan our next move," he said. As they prepared to leave, Jake heard the sound of the Dominion guards approaching. The soldiers had finally figured out where the intruders were hiding. Commander Vex's voice echoed across the clearing. "Human, you have caused enough trouble. Surrender now, and I will make your death quick." Jake and Lisa ran toward the tunnel entrance. Behind them, they could hear the guards chasing them. The alien weapons fired bolts of energy that burned the trees around them. They reached the tunnel entrance just as the resistance ships arrived overhead. The beautiful crystal vessels began to engage the Dominion forces, and Jake could see beams of light shooting between the ships. Jake and Lisa made it safely into the tunnel. They could hear the sounds of battle above them as the resistance fighters fought against the Dominion soldiers. "We did it," Lisa said, breathing heavily. "We disabled their ships." Jake nodded, but he was worried. Yes, but more ships are coming. The Dominion is going to attack Earth with everything they have. Jake used the communicator to contact Zephyr. We are safe in the tunnels, he reported. The Dominion ships are disabled, but they are sending reinforcements. I know, Zephyr replied. We intercepted their messages. But you have given us a great advantage. Without their ships, the soldiers on the ground cannot escape, and they cannot call for immediate help. The battle above continued for another hour. Jake and Lisa could hear explosions and the sound of energy weapons. Finally, the sounds began to fade. Zephyr's voice came through the communicator. Jake, it is safe to come out. We have won this battle. Jake and Lisa emerged from the tunnels to find a changed world. The Dominion ships were smoking ruins, and the forest clearing was filled with resistance fighters from many different species. Jake saw creatures that looked like living plants, beings made of pure energy, and others that were so strange he could not even describe them. But they all had one thing in common. They were all fighting against the Dominion. Zephyr approached Jake with a smile. My friend, you have done something incredible. You have shown that the Dominion can be defeated. But they are sending more ships, Jake said. How can we fight an entire empire? Zephyr's expression became serious. That is what we need to talk about. You have discovered something that could change the course of this war. Zephyr explained that Jake's ability to adapt and use alien technology was almost unique in the galaxy. Most species developed along predictable paths, making it easy for the Dominion to counter their weapons and tactics. But humans are different, Zephyr said. Your people have an unusual ability to think creatively and adapt to new situations. You can take technology from different sources and combine it in ways that no one expects. Jake looked at the hybrid devices he had created, Earth tools combined with alien technology. He had not realized how unusual this was. The Dominion's strength comes from their ability to predict. Jake had been hiding in the cave for 3 hours when he heard voices outside. The Dominion soldiers were getting closer to finding his hiding place. He could hear them talking in their harsh language as they searched the area around the waterfall. Jake knew he could not stay in the cave much longer. The soldiers would find him eventually, and then he would be trapped with no way to escape. He had to move, but he needed to be smart about it. Jake looked at the supplies he had brought with him. He had his rifle, some food, the alien weapon he had taken from the soldier, and several tools from his workshop. He also had the communicator that Zephyr had given him. Jake called Zephyr again. I have to leave my hiding place, he whispered. The soldiers are too close. Be very careful, my friend, Zephyr said. I am still several hours away, but I have good news. Other resistance fighters are closer. They should reach your area soon. Jake felt a little better, knowing that help was coming, but he still had to survive until then. He waited until the soldiers moved away from the waterfall, then carefully climbed out of the cave. Jake began to move through the forest again, but this time he had a plan. Instead of just running away, he was going to use the forest itself as a weapon against his Dominion soldiers. Jake knew every inch of these woods. He knew where the ground was soft and where it was rocky. He knew which trees were strong and which ones were dead and ready to fall. He knew where the streams were and where the cliffs were hidden by bushes. The Dominion soldiers did not know any of these things. They were used to fighting on different worlds with different environments. Earth's forests were strange and dangerous to them. Jake began to set traps throughout the forest. He used fallen logs to create barriers that would slow the soldiers down. He dug holes and covered them with branches and leaves. He tied ropes between trees at the right height to trip the soldiers as they ran. The soldiers were getting frustrated. Every time they thought they had found Jake's trail, they would run into one of his traps. They were strong and tough, but they were not used to this kind of fighting. Commander Vex was becoming more and more angry. His soldiers were supposed to be the best warriors in the galaxy, but a single human was making them look like fools. This human is using primitive tactics, Commander Vex said to his soldiers. But he knows this terrain better than we do. We need to change our approach. Commander Vex decided to split his forces. He sent some soldiers to the north, some to the south, and some to the east. He kept a few soldiers with him and went west. This way, they could surround Jake and prevent him from escaping. Jake saw what the soldiers were doing, and he knew he was in trouble. He could not fight all of them at once, and they were cutting off his escape routes. He needed help, and he needed it soon. As Jake was thinking about what to do next, he heard a human voice calling his name. Jake! Jake Morrison! Are you out there? Jake was surprised. He had not expected to hear another human voice. He moved carefully toward the sound. Staying hidden behind the trees, Jake saw a woman in a park ranger uniform standing in a small clearing. She was holding a radio and looking around nervously. Jake recognized her as Lisa Chun, a ranger who worked in the National Forest. He had met her a few times in town. Lisa? Jake called out softly. What are you doing here? Lisa turned toward, his voice with relief on her face. Jake, thank God I found you. There are strange things happening in the forest. I saw those black ships, and I have been hearing reports of unusual activity. Jake came out from behind the trees. Lisa, you need to get out of here. It is very dangerous. What is going on? Lisa asked. Those ships are not from any military I know about. Jake quickly explained what had happened. He told Lisa about Zephyr, the Dominion, and the soldiers who were hunting him. Lisa listened with wide eyes, and Jake could see that she was having trouble believing what he was telling her. I know it sounds crazy, Jake said, but those soldiers are not human. They are aliens, and they want to capture me because I helped their enemy. As if to prove Jake's point, they heard the sound of the alien soldiers crashing through the forest nearby. Lisa heard their harsh voices speaking in a language she had never heard before. Okay, I believe you, Lisa said. What do we do now? Jake thought for a moment. Lisa knew the forest almost as well as he did. She had been working as a ranger for 5 years, and she was trained in wilderness survival. She could be a valuable ally. We need to stay ahead of them, Jake said. And we need to make it as difficult as possible for them to follow us. Lisa nodded. I know some places where we can hide. There are old mining tunnels in the mountains that are not on any maps. Jake and Lisa began to move through the forest. Together, Lisa was a good partner. She was quiet and careful, and she knew how to move without leaving tracks. They reached one of the old mining tunnels that Lisa had mentioned. It was hidden behind some large rocks and thick bushes. The entrance was small, but once inside, the tunnel opened up into a larger space. This should give us some time to plan, Lisa said. These tunnels go for miles underground. Even if they find the entrance, they will have a hard time following us. Jake used the communicator to contact Zephyr again. I have found a human ally, he told his alien friend. We are hiding in underground tunnels. That is good news, Zephyr said. I am getting closer to your location. I should be there within 2 hours. Try to stay hidden until then. Jake and Lisa explored the tunnel system. There were many passages that led in different directions. Some of them led to other entrances, which gave them multiple escape routes. These tunnels were dug by miners over 100 years ago, Lisa explained. They were looking for gold and silver. The tunnels are mostly safe, but some parts are unstable. Jake had an idea. Can we use these tunnels to our advantage? Maybe we can attack the soldiers from underground. Lisa thought about this. It is possible. Some of the tunnels come out in different parts of the forest. We could move around without being seen. Jake and Lisa began to plan their attack. They would use the tunnel system to move around the forest and strike at the soldiers from unexpected directions. It was a risky plan, but it might work. They spent the next hour preparing. Jake showed Lisa how to use the alien weapon he had taken from the soldier. Lisa was a quick learner, and she soon understood how the weapon worked. "This is incredible technology," Lisa said. "It is like something from a science fiction movie." "It is real," Jake said. "And there is much more where that came from. The galaxy is full of amazing technology and dangerous enemies." Jake and Lisa moved through the tunnels to a position where they could watch the soldiers. The aliens were still searching the forest, but they were getting frustrated. They had been looking for Jake for hours, and they had not found him. Commander Vex was talking to his soldiers. Jake could not understand the words, but he could tell that the commander was angry. The soldiers seemed nervous and uncomfortable in the forest environment. "They are not used to this kind of environment," Jake whispered to Lisa. "They are stronger and faster than we are, but they do not know how to fight in a forest." Lisa nodded. "They are making too much noise, and they are not watching for traps. They are like city people trying to camp in the wilderness." Jake and Lisa waited for the right moment, then attacked. They fired the alien weapons at the soldiers from their hidden position. The soldiers were surprised and confused. They did not know where the attack was coming from. After firing a few shots, Jake and Lisa quickly moved through the tunnels to a different position. They attacked again from a new direction, then moved again. The soldiers were running around in circles, trying to find their attackers. Commander Vex realized what was happening. "They are using the underground passages," he said to his soldiers. "Find the entrances and seal them off." But the soldiers did not know where all the tunnel entrances were located. There were dozens of them scattered throughout the forest, and they were well hidden. Jake and Lisa continued their hit-and-run attacks. They would strike quickly, then disappear before the soldiers could react. It was working, but Jake knew they could not keep it up forever. "We need to do something bigger," Jake said to Lisa. "We need to stop them from calling for more reinforcements." Lisa had an idea. What if we could damage their ships? Without their ships, they would be stuck here. Jake thought about this. It was a dangerous plan, but it might work. "We would need to get close to the ships," he said. "That means leaving the safety of the tunnels." "I know a way," Lisa said. "There is a tunnel that comes out near the clearing where their ships are landed. We could get close without being seen." Jake and Lisa made their way through the tunnels toward the clearing. As they got closer, they could hear the sounds of the alien ships. The ships were making a low humming sound, like giant insects. They reached the tunnel entrance near the clearing and carefully looked out. The 3 large black ships were sitting in the middle of the clearing. There were only a few soldiers guarding them, since most of the soldiers were in the forest looking for Jake. "This is our chance," Jake whispered to Lisa. "But we have to be very careful. If we are caught, there will be no escape." Lisa nodded. She was scared, but she was also determined. "Let us do this," she said. Jake and Lisa prepared to leave the safety of the tunnels and attack the Dominion ships. They did. Jake woke up to the sound of his dog barking. Rex was a big German shepherd who never barked unless something was wrong. Jake looked at his clock. It was 7 in the morning, and he had only been sleeping for 2 hours. Jake got out of bed and looked out his bedroom window. What he saw made his blood run cold. 3 huge black ships were floating in the sky above his house. They were much larger than Zephyr's ship and looked like they were built for war. The ships were dark and angular, with no curves or beauty. Like Zephyr's crystal vessel, Jake quickly got dressed and grabbed his rifle. He knew these had to be the Dominion ships that Zephyr had warned him about. They had found his house, and they were here for him. Jake looked out his kitchen window. and saw soldiers surrounding his house. They were not human. They looked like large lizards walking on two legs. They wore black armor and carried weapons that glowed with red light. Their leader was even bigger than the others, with scars on his face and cruel yellow eyes. The leader of the soldiers spoke in a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together. Jake could not understand the words, but somehow he knew what the creature was saying. "Human, come out of your dwelling. We know you aided the Luminary fugitive. Surrender now, and you will not be harmed." Jake knew he could not trust these creatures. He had seen the fear in Zephyr's eyes when talking about the Dominion. These were not beings who showed mercy to anyone. Jake went to his workshop and quickly gathered some tools and supplies. He had an idea, but he needed to work fast. The alien soldiers were getting closer to his house, and he could hear them talking to each other in their harsh language. The leader, who called himself Commander Vex, was losing patience. "Human, you have 30 seconds to come out, or we will come in and take you by force." Jake had been working on something in his workshop while the soldiers waited. He had taken apart several electronic devices and combined them with some of the alien technology that Zephyr had left behind. He was not sure if his idea would work, but he had to try. Commander Vex gave an order to his soldiers. They began to move toward Jake's house with their weapons ready. Jake could see them through his workshop window. They moved differently than humans, like predators hunting prey. Jake finished his work and held up the device he had created. It looked like a mix of car parts, radio equipment, and the glowing crystals from Zephyr's ship. He hoped it would do what he thought it would do. The soldiers reached Jake's front door and began to break it down. Jake pressed a button on his device, and suddenly all the lights in his house went out. More importantly, the soldiers' weapons stopped glowing, and their armor seemed to shut down. Jake had created an electromagnetic pulse device using Earth technology and alien crystals. The pulse disrupted the Dominion's advanced electronics, just like Zephyr had taught him about energy flow and conductors. The soldiers were confused and angry. They had never encountered anything like this before. Their weapons and armor were designed to work against known galactic technology, not the strange hybrid device that Jake had created. Jake used this moment of confusion to escape through the back door of his workshop. He ran toward the woods, carrying his rifle and a bag of supplies. He knew these woods better than anyone, and he hoped he could use that advantage. Commander Vex roared with anger when he discovered that Jake had escaped. "Find him," he shouted to his soldiers. "He cannot have gone far." The Dominion soldiers began to chase Jake through the forest. They were strong and fast, but they were not used to Earth's environment. The thick trees and rocky ground made it difficult for them to move quickly. Jake ran along paths that he had known since childhood. He knew where every rock and tree was located. He knew which paths were safe and which ones led to cliffs or swamps. The alien soldiers did not have this knowledge. As Jake ran, he used the crystal communicator that Zephyr had given him. "Zephyr, can you hear me?" he whispered into the device. After a few moments, Zephyr's musical voice came through the communicator. "Jake, my friend, I am here. What is wrong?" "The Dominion found me," Jake said as he ran. "They are chasing me through the woods. I need help." Zephyr's voice was filled with concern. "I am so sorry, Jake. This is my fault. I should have been more careful." "Do not worry about that now," Jake said. "What can you tell me about these soldiers? How can I fight them?" Zephyr quickly explained what Jake was facing. The Dominion soldiers were called Scarith. They were reptilian creatures who were bred for war. They were stronger and faster than humans, and their weapons could kill with one shot. "But they have weaknesses," Zephyr said. "They are not used to fighting in forests like yours. They depend too much on their technology. Without their Advanced equipment. They are just large, angry lizards. Jake smiled at this. He had grown up hunting in these woods, and he knew how to track and trap dangerous animals. Maybe these alien soldiers were not so different from the wild animals he had dealt with before. Jake reached a part of the forest where the trees were. Very thick. He knew this area well, and he had an idea. He quickly set up a trap using rope and fallen branches. It was a simple trap, but it might work against creatures who were not expecting it. The Dominion soldiers were getting closer. Jake could hear them crashing through the underbrush behind him. They were making a lot of noise, which told Jake that they were not used to moving quietly through forests. The first soldier ran right into Jake's trap. The rope caught his legs, and he fell hard to the ground. His armor made a loud crashing sound as he hit the rocks. The soldier was not hurt badly, but he was tangled up and could not move quickly. Jake used this opportunity to grab the soldier's weapon. It was heavy and strange, but Jake quickly figured out how to use it. The weapon fired bolts of red energy that could burn through trees. The other soldiers heard the commotion and came running. Jake fired the alien weapon at them, and they had to take cover behind the trees. Jake was not trying to kill them, just slow them down so he could escape. Commander Vex was getting more and more angry. His soldiers were supposed to be the best warriors in the galaxy, but they were being outsmarted by a single human in a forest. "This human is more dangerous than we thought," Commander Vex said to his second-in-command. "He has knowledge of Luminari technology, and he is using it against us." "Should we call for more soldiers?" the second-in-command asked. "No," Commander Vex said. "We will catch him ourselves. But we need to be more careful. This human is not like the others we have encountered." Jake continued to run through the forest, but he was getting tired. He had been running for hours, and the alien soldiers were still following him. He needed to find a place to rest and think of a better plan. Jake remembered a cave that he had explored as a child. It was hidden behind a waterfall, and it would be difficult for the soldiers to find. He made his way toward the cave, being careful to cover his tracks. As Jake reached the waterfall, he heard the sound of more ships arriving. He looked up and saw that the Dominion had brought reinforcements. There were now 6 black ships in the sky, and Jake could see more soldiers being deployed. Jake realized that he was not just running from a few soldiers anymore. The Dominion was treating him as a serious threat, and they were bringing more and more forces to capture him. Jake entered the cave behind the waterfall and used the communicator to contact Zephyr again. "The situation is getting worse," he told his alien friend. "They have brought more ships and soldiers." "I am on my way back," Zephyr said. "I have contacted other resistance fighters. We will help you, but it will take time for us to arrive." Jake looked out of the cave at the growing number of enemy ships. He realized that his quiet life in the mountains was over. He was now part of a war that stretched across the galaxy, and somehow he had become important to both sides. "I will hold them off as long as I can," Jake said into the communicator. "But I do not know how long I can stay hidden." "You are stronger than you know," Zephyr said. "Trust in yourself and your abilities. Help is coming." Jake settled into the cave and began to plan his next move. He had never been in a situation like this before, but he was determined to survive. The Dominion might have superior technology and more soldiers, but Jake had something they did not have. He was fighting for his home. Jake Morrison wiped the grease from his hands and looked at the old clock on his workshop wall. It was almost 6 in the evening. He had been working on Mrs. Johnson's pickup truck all day, and his back was starting to hurt. The truck was finally running again, but Jake was tired and hungry. He lived alone in a small house in the mountains of Montana. His nearest neighbor was 5 miles away. Jake liked it that way. He had always been good with his hands, and could fix almost anything. Cars, tractors, generators. If it had an engine, Jake could make it work again. Jake picked up his hunting rifle from the corner of the workshop. He often went hunting in the evenings. The woods behind his house were full of deer, and he needed meat for the winter. He walked out of his workshop and into the cool evening air. The sun was setting behind the tall pine trees. Jake knew these woods very well. He had grown up here and had been hunting in these same woods since he was a boy. He walked along the familiar path, listening for any sounds that might tell him where the deer were hiding. After walking for about 20 minutes, Jake heard a strange noise. It was not like any animal sound he had ever heard. It was a low humming sound, like electricity running through wires. Jake stopped and listened carefully. The sound was coming from deeper in the woods. Jake was curious. He had never heard anything like this before. He walked toward the sound, moving quietly through the trees. As he got closer, he saw a strange light through the branches. It was not like sunlight or moonlight. It was blue and white and seemed to move and dance. Jake pushed through the thick bushes and came to a small clearing. What he saw made him stop and stare. In the middle of the clearing was something that looked like a ship, but it was unlike any ship Jake had ever seen. It was made of what looked like crystal or glass, and it was glowing with that strange blue light. The ship was about 20 feet long and 10 feet wide. It had smooth, curved sides and no visible windows or doors. One end of the ship was buried in the ground, and Jake could see that it had crashed here. There were broken trees all around the clearing, and the ground was torn up. Jake stood there for a long moment, not sure what to do. He had never seen anything like this before. He thought about going back to his house and calling someone, but who would he call? Who would believe him? As Jake stood there thinking, he heard a weak sound coming from inside the ship. It sounded like someone was in pain. Jake forgot about being scared and ran toward the ship. If someone was hurt, he had to help them. Jake walked around the ship, looking for a way to get inside. As he touched the smooth surface with his hand, a door suddenly appeared. The crystal material simply melted away, leaving an opening big enough for Jake to walk through. Inside the ship, Jake found something that made his heart race. Lying on what looked like a bed was a creature that was clearly not human. It was tall and thin, with skin that was almost see-through. Its eyes were large and bright, and it was looking at Jake with what seemed like intelligence and sadness. The creature tried to sit up when it saw Jake, but it was clearly very weak. It pointed to a small device on a table near the bed. Jake picked up the device, and suddenly he could understand what the creature was saying. "Please," the creature said in a voice that sounded like music, "I need help. My ship is damaged, and I cannot repair it alone." Jake stared at the creature. He knew he should be afraid, but somehow he was not. The creature seemed peaceful and gentle. "Who are you?" Jake asked. "My name is Zephyr," the creature said. "I am from a place very far from here. My people are called the Luminari. We are explorers and peacekeepers." Zephyr explained that their ship had been damaged while running from enemies called the Dominion. The Dominion was a powerful empire that wanted to control all life in the galaxy. They destroyed or enslaved any race that would not serve them. "The Dominion has been hunting my people for many years," Zephyr said. "We have been running from them, trying to find safe places to hide, but they always find us." Jake felt sorry for Zephyr. He had always helped people who needed it, and this seemed no different. "What do you need me to do?" Jake asked. Zephyr looked surprised. "You will help me, even though I am not like you?" "Of course," Jake said. "You are hurt and need help. That is all that matters." Zephyr smiled, and Jake thought it was the most beautiful smile he had ever seen. "Thank you," Zephyr said. I knew there was something special about your people when I first saw your world. Zephyr led Jake to the damaged part of the ship. The engine was a complex piece of technology that Jake had never seen before. It was made of crystals and metals that seemed to glow with their own light. Parts of it were broken or burned. I do not understand how this works, Jake said, looking at the strange engine. I will teach you, Zephyr said. But first, you must know that this is very dangerous. If the Dominion finds out that you helped me, they will come for you too. Jake thought about this for a moment. He lived alone in the mountains, and he was not afraid of much. I have been in dangerous situations before, he said. I will take that risk. For the next several hours, Zephyr taught Jake about the ship's engine. Jake was amazed at how quickly he understood the alien technology. It was different from anything he had ever worked with, but the basic ideas were the same. Energy flowed through the crystals like electricity through wires. The metals acted like conductors and amplifiers. Jake went back to his workshop and brought tools and materials. He found that some of his Earth tools worked on the alien technology, while others did not. He had to be creative and think of new ways to fix things not working together. Jake and Zephyr slowly repaired the damaged engine. Jake used copper wire from his workshop to replace some of the alien conductors. He used a car battery to provide power while they worked on the main power source. You are very skilled, Zephyr said as they worked. I have met many intelligent species in my travels, but few can adapt to new technology so quickly. I have always been good at fixing things, Jake said. My father taught me that most problems have simple solutions if you think about them the right way. As dawn approached, they finally got the engine working again. The ship's crystals began to glow brighter, and Jake could feel the power flowing through the systems. It is finished, Zephyr said. Thanks to you, I can continue my journey. Before leaving, Zephyr gave Jake a small crystal device. This will allow you to contact me across the stars, Zephyr said. I hope we will meet again under better circumstances. Be careful, Jake said. I hope you find a safe place. I must warn you, Zephyr said as the ship prepared to leave. The Dominion may have detected my presence here. They have ways of tracking our technology. You should be very careful in the coming days. Jake watched as the beautiful crystal ship rose into the sky and disappeared among the stars. He walked back to his house as the sun came up, wondering if he would ever see his new friend again. He had no idea that his life was about to change forever.